Hey everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, a YouTube channel dedicated to the adult survivors of child sexual abuse everywhere. So, as with all shows, we have a trigger warning, and the reason I have that is because some of the content may disturb you, trigger you, remind you, and put you back into a place where you're remembering your own abuse and it's not feeling safe. Please, if that happens, please stop watching. Go to the show notes below and you'll be directed to some resource and support. In the meantime, I've got a fabulous guest for you. Her name's Nettie. It's wonderful to have her with us, and welcome to the show. Nettie.
Hi, how are you?
Great to have you here, and we sorted out all our little technical glitches before, which is awesome. So Nettie, tell us what time is it where you are at the moment?
Oh my goodness. It is probably about 5 45 in the afternoon
Mm-hmm.
here in New Jersey in the United States. That's where I'm from. Wow.
Oh,
So it's great to see platforms as yourself, the one that you're doing, handing back the shame. I think it's a wonderful platform to allow survivors to share their story in a safe place. I think it's very important to do that. So thank you for the invite.
oh, you're very welcome, and it's great to have you on the show, and we're going to hear all about you and kind of what you went through. I guess sometimes what we find is if we start at the beginning and as much or as little as you're comfortable to share, uh, will help our survivors out there. So, Nettie, how old were you when the abuse began? Tell us about it.
So I was very young. It started about 3 years old and it went on for a few years. Probably about 6 or 7 years old. It was an older female cousin of mine. And she was probably about 12, 13 years older than me. Um, and it started out as something of our little secret. And so it wasn't that, and I kept that secret. I kept that secret till I was about, the tender age of 6 or 7. Um, I was being molested by her, and it was every time we went down to New York to visit my aunt, my cousins, my uncle. And it was in an environment where it was safe to me, right? I knew my family. I loved my family. But I always slept with her um, because she also had two other brothers and they had their own room. And it was just me and my little sister. My sister was very young, so she was with my parents. Um, and so it wasn't violent. It didn't hurt. So I think, you know, I felt special, if that sounds weird. But that's how I was feeling. I didn't think it was anything wrong with, what was being done, and that what better yet, but to keep it a secret, it's between us. But I remember when you're a child, you're starting to get older, you start, having imaginary conversations, as you can probably relate to having, playing with yourself. So with dolls, and you're, articulating what they want to say. But in my instance, I was happy to be coloring on the actual ground of our floor. And not on paper, but on ground. And I was just kind of like, to describe it, it would be like a trance. And I'm having a conversation with myself, and as if she was here, if she was present, asking her, why do you touch me in my private spots? because at this point I'm starting to learn what my private spots, are. Um, and I'm just coloring. And then my mom happened to overhear, um, and she was behind me, happened to overhear what I was saying. And so she immediately alerted my father. My father then, not really truly understanding what was going on. He comes into the room and he sees I'm coloring on the room, but not catching what it is that I'm saying. So I'm interrupted by being spanked for actually coloring. And my mom was she was a very conservative mother, like, um, uh, she didn't believe in showing us arguments. So she quickly pulled into the room and I must have explained, you don't know what's going on. You're not understanding. And he came back ashamed, and confronted me and asked me, who's been touching you? So at that point, I'm just a kid, so I just say who it was. And he was just so hurt. But the only thing that was really ever done about it was call, his sister. All I heard was a lot of yelling in the next room. We're never going to see you again. And that's pretty much how it was dealt with. No, I wasn't. We never talked about it again. And so I went on with feeling like, you know, um, I was young, so I didn't really it didn't feel like I was feeling like I left a void or anything, like with never seeing them again. It was what my father said, and that was it. We just never questioned it again. But the feelings that I would be dealing with after that, the aftermath. Um, and I'm just going to be honest, being part of a poetry artist now, I wanted to kind of deal with all of these feelings that I was having, feelings of things that I would remember even in my adult age, of how I was feeling in that 3 or 4 year period of time without being abused. Um, because it wasn't hurting me, I found to like it and to enjoy it. And so I was trying to figure out ways to get that sensation again. And I just couldn't, and it was frustrating me. Um, so I went from, age 6 or 7 to like age 10. And then I started to suppress a lot of the memories, but trying to get the sensation was it was almost like it was a task of trying to feel some kind of comfort because I found comfort in it. And I dare not share this with anyone because the last time I shared something, it was uh it made my father angry.
Yeah.
So I learned very quickly
Yeah.
not to say anything to my family because it just created such an uproar. And my God, I no longer see my family again. So it's kind of like where I was dealing with that. And so, what happens when you don't deal, when children aren't given rehabilitation? I think it's very important for kids to be rehabilitated because who knew that I was dealing with all of these secretive things that one made me feel dirty, but at the same time, it was a necessity. Like I was really trying to soothe. It was like it became a soother, and it always happened at night. So things like this would hit me, at night when I wanted to rest and I couldn't. So I know that sounds weird, right? Maybe
No,
some
no,
people
no.
catching
I mean, look,
on.
you're saying a lot, and it's really insightful what you're saying. So I thank you, because I think what is not often discussed is that the body is designed for pleasure. And if it is stimulated as a young child, of course, because it was wrong and you lost that part of the family just like that, you're then naturally going to associate guilt with it, or loss with it, or grief with it. And I think what's really telling, Nettie, is that even more than that is it was never talked about again. So what happens to the shame? You end up carrying it and holding it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it also leaves room, and if I might share something else, that it also leaves room for me to be a target again. And unfortunately, it happened again when I was 12. The only difference with this one was, well, the difference was, of course, it was a different person, but I never was I was never taught as a child that it was okay not to accept, um, not to accept certain things. Like if I wasn't comfortable, I was never taught if I wasn't comfortable with someone saying to me, oh, give me a kiss, give me a hug. I never, like, I always felt like because, they're an adult, you respected adults and you just listened and you do, oh, it's okay. It's just your uncle. It's just your brother. It's just, no, there was many times that this individual made me feel very uncomfortable with the things that he would say. And all I could say was thank you, or, shy. And it happened to be my dad's assistant pastor.
So how much was this an adult? How old was
This
this?
was an adult. He was my dad's assistant pastor. My father was a pastor, and he was his assistant pastor, who would
Yeah.
often say things to me. I wish I was younger. I'd scoop you up, you'd be my wife. You should date my son so we could keep you in the family. Like, what I did notice was that he never said those things in front of other people. So it even made me more uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to address it. I'm 12. And he had a daughter, his my age, and many times if I stayed the night there before, um there was one particular night where everyone was asleep and I'm talking feet away, inches away from his own daughter when he decided to molest me. After that molestation, what stopped was the tears that would fall from my face onto his arms. And he quickly got out of, molesting me and was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, what did I do? And then they said, we need to pray. We've sinned. Um, and I said to him, I didn't do anything. You did this to me. So at that point, I knew it was wrong. I felt uncomfortable from the very beginning with this man. Um, but I didn't know it would lead to this, of course. And then now you're making me kneel. Now you're making me pray for something that you did for me, that did to me. He ended up preaching the next day, but I couldn't sit in the service. I was very angry and I didn't know who would believe me because this is supposed to be a man of God.
Yes.
And I didn't utter this to anyone except for a friend 4 months later. That friend was very upset, wanted me to share, told me how important it was to share. And I'm not even thinking about the abuse that I went through when I was younger because I suppressed all of that. It was when he felt, because I wouldn't go forward and I wouldn't tell anyone, he then went to an adult and told someone and it was really more so to get counsel. And then that person didn't like what they heard and then told directly to the assistant pastor. And that assistant pastor took time off of work to go to my friend's house to tell him how much I was a liar. And then in 1 week's time, he divided the church and took the church with him, half the church with him. So we had a division all over something that I had to share.
But hang on a minute. I thought that he went to someone to tell them what he'd done to you.
No, I told a friend.
But
My
didn't he go
friend,
to an adult and tell them?
no,
No.
right. My friend went to an adult to get some
Oh,
counsel,
and then
and that adult went straight to him
oh,
to tell him what was being said.
yes, got you. And then what were your mum and dad like about this?
Well, when I shared it with them after I saw what was going on, it was that same, well, was a, I saw that my friend was being distant, and then his friend came to me to tell me he didn't believe me, that I shouldn't have never said those things about this man of God. And I said, well, unfortunately it's true, and now I'm gonna have to tell my parents. And so I ended up telling my parents that evening after this whole fiasco went down at the church.
Yeah,
So at the church.
yeah.
And the only comfort that I got from sharing that with my family was that they believed me.
Oh, thank God.
They did. My mother did ask, like, why didn't you just say anything? And then my dad quickly said, it's not her fault. Why would it, that's all that's a strong thing to even try to share with anybody. So he believed me, but nothing was done about it. He was allowed to take the church. He was allowed to take half the members. My dad didn't fight him for anything. Didn't even, I don't know what I was looking for at 12. I didn't even know, what is the solution, because I still don't, I can't even grasp everything that's happened to me as a child. Um, and so I'm left with this trauma again. Now, even worse, people not believing me,
I
people
guess
calling me
that,
a liar.
yeah. And
And
look,
then, oh, sorry.
now the point I think
Oh,
though is this: for our wonderful survivor family watching this, Nettie, for a lot of us, we had parents that would not believe. And I'm so sorry that you had the experience not once but twice in your young life. You know, I mean, two sets of abuse. My point is, for some watching it, maybe, oh, thank God you had your mum and dad instantly believe you. There was never any doubt. That's such a gift. I guess what you're really thinking and what I'm really hearing is that once again, something like this that you didn't want or ask for or decide on happened to you. And once again, the whole world went boom.
mhm, did. So I
So,
went the rest of my life being a people pleaser.
of course.
And I
So,
had to, oh my God. The trauma for me didn't stop because I felt like it followed me even into my marriage,
yeah.
because um, I thought I married the man of my life. The man of my dreams. I did. I waited to get married. I had 3 children, out of wedlock. And I was very choosy with my mates because I had been through domestic violence. I had been through. See, what happens is when you become when trauma has happened to you, sexual trauma, it opens up doorways you don't even think to expect, especially if you don't get rehabilitated. Like, it's so important for for people who are listening, even to this, I take my story and, and use it as an example of how your children need counseling. When counseling was asked of me for at 12 years old, I rejected it because I didn't know nothing about, you know, the the rewards of, counseling, and how beneficial it was. I just never wanted to speak about it again because of the outbreak it had, everything that happened around just sharing it, you know. So it's going to be very uncomfortable for any child to endure, but they shouldn't do it without counseling. The steps to help them um, gain their identity back and gain trust that this wasn't their fault and gain them actual knowledge so that it doesn't happen again, on the things to look for, because both situations in my life I could have learned from, but I couldn't. I didn't, because nothing was offered for me to learn from it. It was just push it to the side. Hopefully, it doesn't happen again. And now you got to work through your entire life and every obstacle that comes to you, in ways that you probably wouldn't have had this not happened to you.
Oh, 100%. I guess the thing is, as you're talking, of course, our beautiful children need all the help they can get, and just at 12, it didn't feel safe for you to take advantage of the counselling that was offered you. So you can see the value in that now. And I guess, Nettie, when you look at it, just a couple of things. Mum and dad always believed you, so that would have had such an impact. I imagine that they instantly did. But equally, was there ever any reconnection with the wider family? Was there ever any coming back
There was.
together?
I'm glad you brought that up. And it's I just want to let everybody know we have not talked, so she doesn't know my story. But that was an actual great question to ask, because yes, we did reconnect when I was 17 years old.
Yes.
And it had to do, my parents were going on a missions trip in Costa Rica, and me and my sister and my I have a daughter now, right? I ended up having a child at 15. And I have a daughter now. And we decided that we would reconnect with I have a my cousin who lives out in Florida, that we would stay with her. She's now married. She doesn't have any children, but she's now married. And I'm excited to see my cousin because I haven't seen her in years, still not remembering the trauma.
Oh,
And
you'd repress that. You'd repress that, had you?
I did. I suppressed all of it. I didn't even realize it even happened.
Yeah.
And my first night at her house, after we had a wonderful dinner and laughed with her husband, and just got acclimated again, when I went to rest, when I went to sleep with my daughter, holding my daughter, I call it the download. Everything that I had suppressed came to my remembrance. And it was horrifying to remember the things that were being done to me. And now I'm in a nightmare. I am in her home, and now I have my own child. I didn't even speak of it. It wasn't until I went home, I kissed the ground. And part of the reason why I kissed the ground was because there was turbulence, so very, very heavy turbulence in the plane. And since then, I haven't flown because it was that devastating. And then I said, I'm never, ever, ever going back there again. And it was about 24 years old when I had my third child. I had to sit my parents down because the weight of what I remembered was so heavy and so prevalent in my life. And I wanted to know if it was true, if it happened, if it was for real. And it was then when my mother spoke up and said, yes, all of it is true. And you would think my first reaction was, why would you let me go back to her? Like, why wouldn't you remind me it's not a good idea? But then, you know, that wasn't the first thought. The first thought was, how am I going to deal with this? And I didn't even deal with it. And so there was another trauma of, like I said, I was trying to tell you about, I thought I married the man of my life, my dreams. And it was probably 2 years into the marriage, I started to see a shift change. We were a blended family. Okay. I had 3 kids. He had three, and together we have one. And we thought we were just like the perfect Brady Bunch. I started to see later on in the marriage a shift change in the kids and the girls, particularly his and mine. And I felt like, why am I like, what is going on? And nothing, like, I'm saying all this to get to the point. The point was that, I found out that he was molesting, our kids. And I'm like, this part, this trauma here for me was meant to destroy me. It was meant to kill me because I wanted to kill myself. I wanted to die because what I never wanted was for my kids to, go out the way that I did, or to experience the things that I have. And my children grew up knowing body parts, what they were called, what you don't allow to touch, and tell on me if it's me. You know what I mean? Like if it's me that's touching these parts, I want you to tell on me. That's how serious I took it. But I was only limited to the information that I knew with what happened to me. I was very limited. That's all I could show them, that's all I could tell them, but it still happened because my daughter was looking for a father figure, and she ended up, she saw that in him. Now, do I know for a fact that he was grooming them because there was a certain age that he preferred? Yes. So the initial abuse didn't happen right away, but when I found out about it, of course, the police were involved, and he ended up, going to jail, everything. We went to court. It was a long, drawn out thing, but this thing was meant to destroy me. And what I can remember before I started getting the counseling, because first of all, I needed a therapist to help digest my thoughts because the things that I was thinking about myself, the painful regret of, I stayed single for 8 years for a reason, because I just didn't trust myself in relationships. And this, this was the worst of them.
So tell me, how old were the girls when he was abusing them, Nettie?
12,
12.
11 and
Well,
12.
I'm so, so sorry, from one mum to another. What a horrible thing for you to have had to go through. I'm so sorry that happened. And yeah, that's really tough. That's really tough.
I couldn't even be a mother to them.
Yeah. No.
I mean, that was, uh, it's, what I can tell you is that it took about 5 years, 5 years for all of us to gain trust, to gain love, to gain, to operate in those what would you think would be natural things to flow in, because I hated myself.
Of course.
Mhm.
But look,
Um,
can I
go
just say though,
ahead.
Nettie, I just need to give you some wisdom here. Um,
Mhm.
this was not on you. This did not come from you. This was an adult who willingly chose to do what he did to beautiful children. That was not you. So let's hand the shame back. I know you love that saying. Let's
I
hand the
do.
shame back to where it belongs. It was him, not you.
I know that now, but you know, in retrospect of just being honest, and then to share it because you got to be relatable in order for people to understand, right? So I feel like I have to be completely honest because if it wasn't for the church that I was working for, I was working at my home church. And every time I was having a trigger or a setback, they were there in support. I think it's important for churches in general to have some support services for individuals who go through things like this because I certainly needed support. Not only did I need spiritual support, but I needed definitely professional support. I'm glad that I did. I'm glad I was receptive to it. And it only helped me evolve into my greater purpose. My greater purpose now is I'm doing something very similar as to what you're doing, is to giving a safe space for survivors to share their story,
Mhm.
um, and to talk about uncomfortable conversations that we can all learn from.
So tell us
And
what you are doing, because I know you're an artist and I know that you write poetry and I know there's many interesting things. So what are you working on? What are you doing? Like share with
Mhm.
us.
So during my therapy, I was I was told, let's write. I want you to write. And I wouldn't write.
Oh,
I wouldn't write. I said, you're asking me to muster up words that I can't even express, verbally. I can't even muster up thoughts to make a complete sentence. And if my job wasn't so scripted, I probably wouldn't have been able to do my job, right? And so I did. I decided to write one day. It took about 6 months. Okay. But when I did, I wrote my first piece, and it was called Author of Love. And it came out poetically, naturally. And for the first time, because I might have wrote like gospel songs and things like that, because I'm a singer. And
of
but
course you are.
I never wrote anything before, and it just came out poetically, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, maybe there's something here. And so that drove me to want to write even more. And I think in 1 year I probably completed like 300 poems. And I was just able to really articulate a lot of feelings. So I'm an emotional writer. And so when I'm upset or if I'm emotional about someone or something or someone's story, I start to write. And I think I write the some of my best work came from being under the stress of being upset. And I think poetry is a great outlet for anyone to even try, even if they've never even created a poem in their life. But I think poetry allows room for all kinds of poetry and all kinds of thoughts on paper. So I commend anybody to try it. I didn't know that was in me, and I am 30, like 40 years old now, in my 40s, and I'm 40. I turned 47 at the end of the month. But I've been doing poetry now for the last 10 years, and I get booked for events. A lot of it is all about it's faith-based, but it's also direct correlation of self accountability for, the part that we We need to heal. And yeah, I mean that, and then the platform that I do a Facebook Live, monthly Facebook Live. Now it's going to be into a podcast, and it's called "They Took My Choice Away." So when you said handing the shame back, and when you say things like, that oftentimes, victims never were given a choice, it just um it just resonates in my spirit that I'm doing the right thing, I'm saying the right thing, and we're all connected in ways that people may not understand, but there's an understanding between among survivors, and I think it's important, equally important, to have as many opportunities to be able to release the junk that we store up.
So
So.
it's amazing because I'm almost going to ask you, is there anything you don't do? Singing,
I,
writing, poetry, artist, like,
mhm,
wow, phenomenal release and phenomenal outlets too. And for our beautiful survivors watching,
mhm.
having an outlet, it doesn't actually matter much what it is. If it feeds you, if it fuels you, if it lifts you, if it shifts you, do it. And what a release, what a beautiful release. So I guess, Nettie, is there anything you would say, what I guess has helped you apart from that? What has helped you in your recovery and healing?
Well, the importance of, okay, so it's like, I feel like it's two-part, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna first start out with God. It really has to do it had to do with my relationship with God and how much I had to trust Him, even in this process. And even though a lot of, our faith believers will believe, you don't fight with, you don't wrestle with flesh and blood, but sometimes you have to, right? In order for you to save yourself. And so I had to get my gloves on and fight the very, things that were attacking my mind. Like, you're not an adequate mother. You don't love yourself, how you're gonna love others. And I really had to be teachable at this point. I needed to be teachable because I needed to learn how to really truly love. When I look back at my life, even though I wanted to, I did a lot of things in stride, but that's part of um, what I went through with my trauma. When kids go through trauma, and me in particular, now not only am I a people pleaser, and because that ends up being a full-time job, right? So, I took that on as a responsibility and felt like I'm just a servant. I just serve, and I don't expect anything in return. And that was very unhealthy. So I had to unlearn a lot of, what I was doing before to become this healthier me. I couldn't have done that without therapy. So God, then therapy, and then I had to be self accountable now that I know, the part that I play into all of this. Now I know I can't no longer bleed all over my children because I'm hurting. You understand? So I had to go back and not only I had to ask for forgiveness. I had
Yes.
to go back to my children and say, I was just going through such a tough time, and not that it's an excuse, because how I treated you wasn't, you sorry. How I treated you wasn't okay. The lack of attention that I gave you wasn't okay. And you were going through far worse than the guilt and the shame that I was going through. And even though I tried to do the very best I could, because my kids are the ones that helped me, through it. It was my son, my baby boy. He was only 8 months when, you know, that's the child that I had with my ex-husband. He was the one that really saved me because he was my distraction, and he was the one that showed me, I can still love. effortlessly, because I thought, how in the world, if I hate myself so much, how can I love anybody else? But he helped me see that I can love. It's just hard, right? Love is hard.
Well,
Like
self-love is
loving.
difficult for survivors.
So
It's one of our
yes,
challenges. So
and
I
that's what I
guess,
mean like that.
yeah, 100%, because it's taken from us as the
Yeah,
abuse occurs, because we know what's happening is so terribly wrong, but we don't have the capacity to change it because the
yeah,
adult or the older person has much more power than we do. So self-love can be very hard for people, survivors,
yeah.
to feel and believe in. I guess the other thing too is, as we're coming into close, what advice would you give to survivors watching who maybe are struggling in their recovery at the moment, in their journey? What advice would you offer?
Choose you every time. It's a choice. It's a choice that you're going to have to make, and sometimes that's hard. But choose you every time. If something is making you uncomfortable, or something that is that you don't want to do, even though it may not be hurting you, then take a step back and kind of evaluate why you don't want to do them. Um, See the benefits of, if there are any benefits, and kind of like analyze some of the decisions that we make about ourselves, and kind of work those things out so that you're not stuck in a slump, or you're not stuck, being uh, an extreme introvert, due to the things that might have happened to you, because there is life after trauma. Should you choose it, I'd say choose you every time,
I
and
love that.
figure out.
I love
Yeah.
that. Hey, and Nettie, is there anything, any last words, anything you would like to share or say, um, that you haven't covered off today?
I think that we need to understand that depression is real, right? It takes a toll on ourselves, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're depressed, and we're kind of just, going through the motions of life and work and motherhood or fatherhood and all of that. But I think it's important that you get some education for yourself what depression looks like, get an understanding of it, and just kind of get ahead of it. One of my poetry pieces, I decided that I was going to give depression an acronym. So I gave it an acronym in my piece, and in that, it allows me to remember what it looks like. So when I start to see it and it starts to lurk around the corner, now I can, you know what, I can combat this. I see it for what it is. And then just, because it is depression, people are dying and killing themselves, over the smallest things, because they haven't been able to deal with some of the things that happen to them. So you're worth everything, and you're worth something to someone, and your voice is important. So um, fight for yourself.
Yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so,
You're
so
welcome.
much. Nettie, please stay right there. Don't go anywhere. Um,
Yes, ma'am.
so audience, as we're closing out with the wonderful Nettie today, I'm just thinking about what she shared, and, very honored to have her with us today. She talked about her recovery and healing, and how God and therapy and asking for forgiveness from her children was paramount, and the really, really powerful, powerful things to choose and do. And I'm very grateful, because I think it can be really hard to share everything that Nettie did with us. My personal favourite, though, out of everything she shared is Choose You. And I 100% endorse that and love it. And so, beautiful survivors, as we're finishing today, please know I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you. Please like, subscribe, and share this video.